welcome to another Top Grades video, and this one comes with a trigger warning. This video is going to reduce your anxiety. Do not watch if you want to stay anxious, because I'm going to give you simple steps that you can do today, tomorrow before the exam, and in the exam, which are going to make you ace it. Let's start with today. So, your most important thing to get sorted today is the quotes for your two texts. You do not need a mega number of quotes. This is because the extract will be full of quotes, and that means you can have 10 key quotes which fit every single essay. How will you find those quotes? They should be in your notes, but what if they're not? Well, I have made a video on most of the text showing the key quotes, and I will link them in the description below. Or I've made revision cards which you can just grab hold of. They too will be in the description below. Well, what do we do with those quotes? We have to link them to the author's ideas. The ideas is where grade 7 and above are, okay? And those ideas will stay the same whatever the question. So it makes a lot of sense to get hold of those ideas now and think, what is it that the author was up to? So let's just rattle off a few very quick ones. In Macbeth, Shakespeare's ideas are to flatter King James, his interest in the witches, to write a cautionary tale warning the nobles against trying to get rid of the king through regicide or indeed any other way. And they're also to examine the portrayal of women. Does Shakespeare agree that Lady Macbeth is a villainous character who deserves eternal damnation, or does he see her as a victim of patriarchal society? There's no right answer, there is your answer. So you've got clear ideas. In Romeo and Juliet, is Shakespeare trying to show that young love deserves to be liberated and patriarchal society is causing the tragedy of their suicides and deaths? Or is he blaming the young lovers and writing a cautionary tale about youth and how parents need to keep a closer eye? Is he writing something about the human condition, the nature of love that we all experience through life, and bringing it to life in a passionate and tragic way simply to get bums on seats and earn the moolah? Whatever author's ideas you go for will lead to your higher grade. Then, essays. Essays are by far the best way to revise. So once you've got your quotes and your ideas, why not do an essay plan or two where you think what's most likely to come up and then match your quotes and your ideas to those essay titles. What you'll find is only 10 quotes will fit most essays. The author's ideas will fit every single essay. This will give you confidence and a sense of calmness. Right. Let us go to tomorrow morning. Do not get up at stupid o'clock tomorrow and start cramming. You need your energy. Energy is going to be super important tomorrow in the exam. So give yourself a proper night's sleep. Wake up with good time to get to school. I would say half an hour or an hour before the exam. You want to be in an excellent frame of mind. On your way to school, you're going to revise the notes that you made today. Or you might even do that if you wake up early, you're going to revise those notes. You're not going to do any extended writing, and you're not just going to read, because reading notes does not lead to memory. What you're going to do is test yourself. Turn the notes over. What was on the notes? I remember on that side we had today and tomorrow. Today was in black, Tomorrow was in red. Am I right? No, it's in blue. And that's what you do. I've made a mistake, let me check again. And then you will prompt your brain to remember the important information. So, that's what you're doing on the way to school. At school, you're going to grab a mate and you're going to get your mate to test you on any of those, and you will test your mate on theirs. You do not want to worry about the stuff you don't know. The stuff you don't know is utterly irrelevant because this will be enough. And now we come to paper 1. You are in the exam hall. It might sound daft, but make sure you're answering the right question. Turn to the right bit of section A and the right bit of section B. Find out what your question is. Then you're going to take the key words in the question. What is it that you have to write about? Those key words, let's call it ambition in Macbeth, or let's call it supernatural, or let's go to A Christmas Carol and call it family or Christmas spirit. Whatever's in the question, you're going to highlight those words and then you're going to put them at the top of the first 3, 4 or 5 answer pages. Why would you do that? It is to remind you that every time you write something down, every paragraph has to relate back to those key words. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But it's easy in the exam to start writing everything you know and forget, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be answering this question. So do that and you will always be answering the question. This will give you massive AO1 marks doing the whole task, and it won't be stressful because you know you won't make a mistake. Those words are there. Now, the thesis statement. If you are not writing thesis statements, that's okay. The examiners couldn't care less. But if you've watched any of my videos, you'll know I say write a thesis statement with 2 or 3, preferably, of the author's ideas. Now you can see why the revision today is so important. Those ideas are going to be what you try to prove in your essay. So, if you did get a Macbeth essay on ambition, every time you were writing about ambition, you would relate it back to Shakespeare's idea. Why does he want to show ambition? Oh, that helps him write a cautionary tale warning the nobles that their ambition should not be to replace King James. And you can do that whatever the question is, because Shakespeare's ideas will always be the same. Also, when you have 3 ideas in your thesis statement, that gives you 3 different sections to write in your essay. Effectively, your thesis statement becomes your essay plan. You don't have to waste loads of time planning. If you have a planning technique that worked in the mocks, stick to that planning technique. But if the plan in the mocks didn't help you, A, because it took too long, or B, because you couldn't come up with ideas, the thesis statement is much more efficient because you can write it straight away, then it becomes your plan. You already know what you're going to write because you've revised the ideas in advance, and so there is no stress, and you've already started getting grades. Because remember what I told you here is true here. The ideas put you in grade 7 territory or above. So the examiner's going to go, whoa, thesis statement full of the author's ideas, 7 or above for that part of your essay. Then we come to the extract. So there are several ways of approaching the extract. Do not change anything if it is working for you in the mocks. If, however, you are not getting the grades you want in the mocks, then you might consider some advice that I'm going to give you. But most of all, do not change anything that is working. You want to feel confident and you want to feel relaxed, and last minute Mr. Salles' advice might not make you feel confident or relaxed. Okay? So weigh it up. Be kind to yourself. So, the extract. You need 2 quotes from the extract. You can have more, but 2 is enough to show the examiners I have dealt with the extract. What quotes are you going to pick? It really doesn't matter. If there's anything in the extract, particularly the Shakespeare one, that you don't understand, ignore. Like, don't stress about that. You're just looking for two things you do understand. So that should be easy. There'll be like 15 lines. You're bound to find two that you can write about. When you write about the extract, you can show off a little bit of language analysis. Many teachers teach you to do loads of language analysis. You can do that, but you don't have to. Lots of language analysis is not in the mark scheme. A little bit is with AO2. But really, language analysis just means this. Show me how those words the author used links to, guess what, the author's ideas and the thesis statement. You don't need to say, oh, this is a really great extended metaphor which presents the character as blah, blah, blah. If you spot that it is, then obviously you are going to write that. You will get a few subject terminology marks, but you don't have to only find quotes full of language feature techniques to write about. And I want you to be calm about that. If you do see some that are language features, put them in. Will writing about the language feature get you the marks? No. That will only get you some marks for using the right terminology. Just a few. The real marks are saying, well, what's the effect of those words? And you might think, I don't know what the effect is. I can't guess what the author had in mind. Aha! But actually now you do know, because the effect will be the author is trying to put forward their ideas. Which ideas? Well, you've already put them in the thesis statement. A new idea might occur to you in the extract. And as soon as you say how this relates to the writer's ideas, grades go up. I teach my students to remember this phrase: Shakespeare's purpose, Dickens' purpose, Stevenson's purpose, any author's purpose. As soon as I use those words, I know that what comes next will be the author's ideas, and I know that what comes next will be better grades. So write about the writer's purpose, which is a way of writing about the writer's ideas. Okay, how much should you write about each quote in the extract? As much as you want, but AO1 also asks you to complete the whole task, which is the second bullet point in the question, which means you must write about the whole of the text. How are you going to write about the whole of the text? Two ways. Let me put down my trusty book. Way number one, you're starting with the extract, then you're going to say, right, here's the extract and my quote. I'm now going to look at a similar idea that happened earlier in the text and then at the end of the text or the end of that character. If I go from the beginning to the end, I'm showing the examiner that I followed the arc of the journey of that theme or the arc of the journey of that character, and that shows I'm dealing with the whole of the text. So how will that work? Quote number one from the extract, something from earlier, something from the end of the character or the end of the text, and then I go to the next quote in the extract. What does that remind me of earlier, and what does that remind me of later, preferably towards the end of the character or the end of the text, and those marks are in the bag. This, of course, means writing quite chunky paragraphs because you will have 6 quotes and you'll probably be doing about 80 to 100 words per paragraph. Many of you think, that's not a chunky paragraph, sir. My teachers tell me to write massive paragraphs, to which I will say, that is fine. If you have paragraph structures which are massive and chunky and they're getting you the grades that you want, carry on. But if you are writing massive and chunky paragraphs which aren't getting you the grade, then massive chunky paragraphs are the problem, and instead you want to be writing around 100 words per paragraph, around 6 quotes. Now, if, however, you struggle with starting with the extract because you realise it's really hard to keep jumping from the extract to the beginning and then to the end, there is another method. And this is the method that I would actually use if I were sitting the exam. When I do my own practice essays, this is the method that comes naturally to me, and I think it is way easier. Remember, do not change anything that's already working for you. But the easier technique is to say, okay, I've written my thesis statement. Now I'm going to write a plan of the key moments in the text that back up the idea in my thesis statement. So if I'm talking about A Christmas Carol and I want to look at the effect of Scrooge's greed, well, where does the greed first come about? Oh, it comes about with that quote about him being a covetous old sinner, and then it comes next where the charity workers come along and say, give us some money, help the poor, and he starts saying, no, I'm not going to help the poor, let them die. And then I might jump to where the Cratchits are having their Christmas meal and they're treating it as a massive feast, but there's hardly anything there, and Scrooge asks if Tiny Tim will live because he can see there isn't enough food to keep him healthy. So as I'm going through my chronological structure that fits the argument that I want to write, I then think, okay, well, where does the extract fit in that sequence? I'll write about the extract when I get there. That is much easier because it takes less thought. I can easily remember the order of important events because that's just the story. Then I know which quotes to pick because they're at those moments in the story. So that is a very stress-less, lack of anxiety way for me to write. I also know that by starting at the beginning, working my way through to the end, I will automatically have the arc of the character and the arc of the themes. Therefore, I will be able to write a brilliant argument. Whatever paragraph structure you use, the most important part of it is the author's purpose. Every time you write a paragraph, link back to the author's ideas that you put in your thesis statement. That shows the examiner you're building an argument, but it also shows the examiner you know that the author is doing this, writing this text for a reason. The characters are constructs. The writer is writing about society. Brucey bonus word which you're going to remember to use. You also know the writer is writing about the human condition. What does that mean? What it means to be human. Ambition is a human instinct. Young love, a human instinct. Both are part of the human condition. Use that phrase, the human condition, and the examiners will melt with kindness, generosity, and awe at the wonderful nature of your essay writing. Right. The B of bang. This should actually be in the middle. This is the most important thing about every single exam in English you ever sit. The B of bang means that you are like a sprinter on the start line and you're going to go on the B of bang. As soon as that gun goes off, you are gone. You are flying. Do not waste time. If you feel a little bit puzzled and a little bit exhausted, look up and you will see loads of students thinking, pondering, but that is just another way of saying loads of students not earning marks. I can't tell you how important this phrase is, although actually I can because I'm going to tell you right now. Writing is thinking. When you write an idea, let's imagine it's a really bad one, you will recognize that it's really bad as you're writing, and that will help you think of a good one. Oh, I've got a better idea than that, and you will write it. Once you have written the better idea, cross out the rubbish idea. Do examiners care about crossings out? 100% no. Do examiners care about really neat handwriting? 100% no. They're relieved because it makes marking your essay quicker, but they don't give you any extra marks for it. As long as the examiner can read what you've written, you will get the marks. That is why slightly messy, super fast writing gets you more grades. Another mantra I'm going to give you, apart from writing is thinking, is points make prizes. The more explanations about the writer's ideas or about the quotes that you write, the higher your grade is going to be. What's going to help you write more? Writing speed. Go on the B of bang. The next point is paraphrase. It's very easy to get super worried when you're thinking of a quote and it just doesn't come to you. Well, it probably might not come to you because it's stressful sitting in an exam, isn't it? What is that quote? I have this sometimes when I'm filming videos and I'm an expert. So what's your solution in the exam? Luckily, the examiners have a gorgeous fix and they call it the paraphrase or the reference to the text. In other words, if you write what the quote was about or some words that are really similar but not exact to the quote, the examiners mark it as though it is the actual quote. In fact, in the mark scheme, the word quote or quotation doesn't even appear. It's not even there. They're not expecting you to remember loads of quotes. The quotes help you with AO2 language analysis, but AO1 and AO3, they don't need language analysis. They're just refer to what happens in the text and what is said in the text. If you paraphrase what is said, you can still get 100%, 30 out of 30, no bother at all. So rather than scratching your head and thinking, I've just got to get the quotation that works, no, just put down your best version of the quote and carry on. B of bang, points make prizes. Right, now we have the character journey or the theme journey, which I've drummed into you many times, and you might be wondering what that is. So here we go. When a character is introduced, the character isn't just a real person. The author has made them up, and the phrase for that is, they are a construct. The characters are constructed. Why does the author construct the character? In order to deliver their ideas, their point of view, which we're going to call the author's purpose. So, when you link the character to the author's purpose, you're then thinking, well, how does the author make that character change throughout the text? That is the character arc, or the character's journey. Similarly, the author will have an idea which they introduce into the text as a theme. But that theme doesn't stay the same all the way through. Let's take Macbeth and his ambition. His ambition at the beginning is to defend his country and to defend his king and stop the invasion. A noble ambition. But during the journey of that theme, he becomes ambitious purely for himself and he wants to become king. This ambition is corrupt and corrupting of others, and therefore leads to the tragic downfall. And you can follow the effects of his ambition until we get his nihilism at the end, his despair. That is the arc, the journey of the theme of ambition. With A Christmas Carol, we could look at greed. He starts off as a super greedy, miserly figure, and he ruins only his own lives and those he affects in his business. Then the effect of that greed gets wider because he could support charities, he could protest against the poor laws, and he chooses not to. And then gradually, as we get to the end of the novel, he gives an incredible amount to charity. He saves the life of Tiny Tim. He improves the lives of all the Cratchits, but he sees himself as a benefactor to mankind and society more generally, hence the huge charity donations. He treats the poor as his children, just like he treats Tiny Tim as his child. See, the character journey and the theme journey automatically get you grade 7 and above. If you are still not feeling relaxed and calm and ready for this exam because you don't think you've got enough quotes, you don't think you've got enough model essays, well, luckily I've got those for you in the description as well, and they only cost $3.99. Which is basically the price of a cup of coffee, which I am going to have now because I need, like you do, some calm and chill. See you on the other side.